Hello and welcome to this very special show where we are in conversation with the Union Minister Hardeep Singh Puri. Sir, thanks so much for speaking to us. As we, get into the thick of things as far as election season is concerned, the question I want to ask you is, sir, as we begin this interview, is what according to you is going to be that single big issue on which you think 2019 is essentially going to be fought on?
Well, look, I'm on record in the last few days of having said that this election is unlike any that has been fought since the 1950s.
Okay.
Because this is the first election in 70 years plus where one political party is going into the election with three clearly defined features. Okay. One, a positive agenda on what we have been able to deliver in terms of goods and services. Shauchalaya, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, Ayushman Bharat, electricity to every village and so on, positive agenda. And concretized. Look, we have 11 crore members. We got 17 crore votes in the last election.
Right.
And we have 22 crore beneficiaries or Labhartis of our scheme. So if you are a beneficiary of the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, I would think, it's an expectation, that if you got a home from the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, you will vote for the BJP.
Okay.
And some of the other members of the family too. So this is one clear difference. The second one, we have a leader who has, in the 5 years that he's been Prime Minister, demonstrated leadership and decisiveness.
Okay.
Number two, and we have a third feature in this election, which is that we are not clear as to whom we are against in terms of opposition.
Okay.
I was in Telangana when one of my party colleagues was asked this. See, there are as many claimants to the Prime Minister's job as there are days in a week. And I must tell you, even the number of days in the week may not be enough to look at the claimants.
Okay, so the fabric of Mahagathbandhan is a fair point. But sir, let me ask you this question. When you talk about a positive narrative, the opposition is saying, well, the BJP's narrative is completely negative. Whether it is about, us versus them, whether it is about, polarization of the campaign, whether it is about, national security. BJP is looking to polarize the narrative.
Look, first of all, let's distinguish between them. When I talk about positive narrative, what I mean is a number of homes you've delivered, 7.9 million you've sanctioned, 4 million more grounded, 1.5 million handed over.
Right.
This is an urban area. You'll talk about the rural area, it's many times that number.
Then
Their
the toilet scheme, Ujjwala, all those,
Ujjwala,
yes.
bank accounts, electricity to every village,
Yes.
8 or 9 crore gas connection.
Yes.
Put that aside.
Yes.
Put that aside. When the allegation comes against the BJP, the allegation is that we are divisive, we are dividing people, that we are onslaught an institution. Each one of them does not stand the test of scrutiny. Let me explain. The only onslaught institutional on democracy per se was in 1975 when they curtailed civil liberties and called the emergency.
Right.
Who attacked the judiciary? Another important institution. During Mrs. Gandhi's time, she attacked the judiciary. She wanted a committed judiciary. Who wanted it attacked more recently? Mr. Kapil Sibal. Who attacked the instruments of democracy, electronic voting machine, against the Congress party? Look, I think that the Congress party has run out of ideas because it is in control by one family. And the mother cannot make up her mind whether on a particular day it is the son who is the heir apparent or it is the daughter. Today it was the son who was there. I think in some respects they've even given up. Mrs. Vadra is already talking in terms of looking at the 2022 UP election.
But she's also spoken about taking on the PM in Varanasi.
Well, I'd like to see that happen. I'd like to see that happen. It's a very interesting situation. When asked in the function today as to why he was fighting from Wayanad, he turned around and said because the southern states, wanting to, I think he forgot, the southern states sent 130 MPs to the Lok Sabha. So it's not that they were waiting for Mr. Gandhi to arrive. Look, I don't know. I haven't been to Amethi, but I think he's going to lose there, number one.
All right.
And I don't know what's happening in Wayanad, but if you have to look for a constituency which gives you a comfort level, and it's a constituency which has a particular kind of demographic, division, and that's why you have chosen that constituency, I think it is going to resound
But
very badly.
But the Congress didn't say that. The opposition can turn around and say, but this is how BJP sees Indians. It divides them into through the prism of polarization.
No, there are other national leaders who at any given point of times have moved to other states for strong political messaging. You remember Mrs. Gandhi chose a constituency, Chikmagalur,
yeah,
if I remember.
Chikmagalur, yes. Sonia Gandhi also chose Bellary, yes.
Bellary. That's a different issue. But this one, I think has an inherent message. And I don't want to dwell on it.
Okay.
All I'm going to tell you is that I find that the Congress party is tripping over several fault lines.
Okay.
And they're having some difficulty in terms of the national narrative.
Okay. As far as the national narrative is concerned, is the BJP trying to stick only and only to the national security? At one level, yes, there are social welfare schemes, a lot of work has been done, there are a lot of beneficiaries. But then the moment you talk about why no transparency in job data, why no clarity as far as, specific promises that were made, suddenly the narrative turns to national security.
Gauri, I don't agree with you. I started by saying this is the first time in the history of India that a political party is coming in with a positive agenda. Now, the fact is that positive agenda covers every part. The economy cannot be growing at 7.5% or thereabouts and jobs not being created.
Raghuram Rajan turned this around. He said, if no jobs are being created, how can you say the economy is growing 7.5%?
I think Mr. Raghuram Rajan quite possibly might find himself another advisory position in a future government, which is not going to be a Congress government because they're not capable of willing, and he'll have to develop this thesis, etc. So he's not that he will find himself, he is looking to finding a position for himself. Look, let me tell you two things. One, I have done a study in my ministry on the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana's employment generation. The problem I emphasize, again, to you and through you to your viewers, is not that there is an employment problem, there is a data problem. All the employment is being generated in the informal sector.
Right.
Agriculture, largest sector for employment. Construction, second largest sector. Textiles, third largest sector. The CII has done a study which says in the last 5 years, something between 13 to 15 million jobs have been created per year, which is more than 1 million per month. Now, somebody says, but the CII data is not reliable. Hey, wait a minute. You know the NSSO study which everybody talks about, it says that its analysis is based on zero urbanization. Okay. Do you know how many people leave the rural areas every day and come looking for employment opportunity to the urban space?
Yes.
Very clearly, there is robust urbanization taking place. Now, if you discard all that, so in my ministry alone, we are building toilets, we are building homes, we are building smart cities, we are building metros. We've added 400 kilometers of metro in the last 5 years.
Yes.
That creates jobs. Now, in Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana alone, we are looking at 66 lakh jobs being created in the period when the Awas Yojana figures were at 40 lakhs.
So why the persistence to not be transparent? That is the perception.
I'll come to you. First of all, this is not correct. First of all, we have a situation where journalists have become politicians, where those who are putting out a narrative in the public domain are part of that narrative, okay?
What about statisticians, sir?
Statisticians have
also
I agree.
About,
I agree with you completely. Statisticians are as political as this thing. First of all, do you or do you not have the instruments to map growth in the informal sector? My submission to you is you don't.
Yes.
And therefore, let's start by acknowledging that I don't have the data, okay? Rather than saying that somebody is holding the data back. I am not aware of what the process is, but I think if I were to have, as a minister, somebody put out data in my ministry which was inherently flawed, I would turn around and say, wait a minute, check it out. It's not that you're not trying to... Look, as a society, as a democracy, we leak like a sieve.
Right.
People have periscope into what you're thinking, let alone into what you're writing. They put out narratives in the press which have nothing to do with facts. All I'm saying is, Confederation of Indian Industry, all right, 13 to 15 million jobs. Compare that with the NSSO study.
Right.
Which would I trust? Any day I would trust the CII data, number one. Number two, I attended a CII national executive session, which is a closed door session, and the kind of reports I heard from the those who are captains of industry in terms of their internal assessment, where the country is going, okay? So the government's narrative is not national security. National security is an add-on. The basic narrative is delivery of goods and services, a decisive leader, and a fractured opposition.
Okay.
Why is that important? Because this is a national election. You're not choosing the state assembly in Uttarakhand. You're electing a central government.
Fair enough. So obviously, so national security, foreign policy, those issues are going to be fairly relevant. And I'm going to come to foreign policy because of your experience that you have, vast experience earlier. But before that, let me ask you this question, sir. When because we are talking about jobs, even when we speak, Congress has spoken saying that its manifesto will dwell as far as creation of 20 lakh jobs is concerned. There is a narrative and a clear push towards how promises have not been delivered. Do you think, in your assessment, this is a case of very tall promises which happens in election
Congress
season?
Party manifesto?
I'm talking about the BJP because 2014, when you talk about very tall promises, and no amount of delivery is going to match up to creation of 2 crore jobs.
No, hold on. First of all, what did the BJP say in 2014? What did they deliver? I can tell you on record that the delivery is more than 75%.
Okay.
More than 75%. Look, once you inherit a system which has been completely dismembered by a particular political party and members of a family over a previous 10-year period, you have some reconstruction which is to be done, starting with corruption, okay? You have a very difficult time in navigating through the courts, etc., making sure that people have to pay a price for what they're doing.
But sir, on corruption, I'll have
Can I complete
then I'll
this,
ask you. Yeah.
Second thing, many of the schemes that you've got, like the Smart City project, it takes 5 years after a city is announced. Our first lot of cities was announced in January 2016. Yeah. So those 5 will be ready in 21. Okay. If you look at the integrated command centers, you look at the ease of living. In Surat, for instance, the women's security has improved by 18%. If you look at the number of cycle tracks, if you look at how you are using energy, for water, for electricity, for security, you need to look at it. But if you make a general statement saying nothing has happened, there are parts of the manifesto which apply to my ministry. I'm putting out a comprehensive response. Okay. Before you put the story out, it's going to be out in the public domain.
Okay, fair enough. Yes, there are some allegations there, and I'm glad that you're going to clarify that. As far as corruption is concerned, 2 things I'm going to ask you there. One is, what about, the 15 lakh rupee that was to come? Again, you think that was a promise that was made in the heat of the moment because it was election trail, and it's just too difficult to deliver. And second is, second is Robert Vadra. Okay, yeah. First you answer about black money and then and 15 lakhs, and then I'm going to ask you about Robert Vadra.
Look, first of all, let's be very clear as to what the issue of corruption means. Whenever you have a culture of impunity operating on as grand and as comprehensive a scale as we had in India prior to 2014, you have to be a Superman to be able to bring it around immediately. Okay. So there is, as I keep saying, there has to be a standstill and there has to be a rollback. What does a standstill mean? That henceforth, since the time the Modi government has come into being, there will not be a single case of corruption which either the Prime Minister or a senior member of his cabinet or anybody in the Council of Ministers can be even remotely associated with. Okay. Now, 5 years, have you ever come across an allegation? I said on another show, maybe people are too scared, but whether they're scared or not, I don't think that there is any tolerance. There's zero tolerance on corruption. Number one. Number two, some people who manipulated the system took money from the banks, took loans, and then ran away. Are we bringing them back or not? We are bringing them back. Is all their money coming back into the accounts? Look, you can be wrong on the extent of black money that there exists in the economy, all right? And demonetization was intended to check that. Some people took their money, a lot of these unscrupulous builders and promoters took the money and took it out to Cyprus or other places. Right. I don't think the government will spare any effort in getting them back. So whether it is Vijay Mallya, whether it is Nirav Modi, or somebody who will come in from Dubai, Mehul Choksi, whether it's, all right, Nirav Modi, there was a suggestion at one point that he has been helped by elements within the system to escape. And I think his arrest and the fact that he continues to be under arrest is a slap on the face of those who made such unsubstantiated allegations.
Yeah, he doesn't have bail. Okay. Then let me ask you about Robert Vadra. And I ask you this because, every time there is an election that is happening, BJP brings up the issue of Robert Vadra. He hasn't even been charge sheeted. Why? It's been 5 years.
1 minute.
And we're still talking about probes.
I think that is a tribute to our criminal justice system. And madam, we did not devise that criminal justice system. That is the Congress party's creation. It had once a law minister who took great pride in saying that all the judiciary senior judges were people who were, on certain agreeable terms. Look, every time you want to bring a fugitive to justice, an economic offender, you don't do it by taking away the other person's rights. They have rights and they will navigate the system. Okay. It takes time. But you see the difference. In the Congress regime, people who were guilty, you remember the Union Carbide case, people in the government helped them leave the country. We are bringing these people back one after the other. I don't want to speak on a particular case. Many cases are sub judice before the courts. But I can say with complete confidence that very soon, all these guys, the wheels of justice grind slowly, but they grind surely. I'm sure many of these guys will be in the locker.
Okay. Now let me now ask you two questions as far as foreign policy is concerned. Given that we are talking about Mehul Choksi, we are talking about Nirav Modi, how India is making efforts to extradite some of these people. In your assessment, how do you see India's foreign policy? Because, a lot of people say, a lot of critics say, opposition says that as far as our Pakistan policy is concerned, there has been so many flip-flops, but at this stage, there is complete lack of clarity.
Wait a minute. The Congress party also uses the word outrageous flip-flops in the manifesto. The only flip-flop that I have come across, and look, I have a career in the Foreign Service going back 39 years, and I worked for several years after that. So my acquaintance with foreign policy is beyond 45 years. I was born into an MEA family also. Two things. One, our Pakistan policy in the Congress era, particularly in the Manmohan Singh era, was characterized by flip-flops. Okay. There would be a terror attack, we would sulk, we would say no talks, and then we would go back to talking. The fundamental difference between the 10 years, 2004 and 14, and the Modi period, 2014 now, is terror and talks do not go together. I think the Prime Minister invested a fair amount of personal capital in trying to see if he could make them change their mind. It became absolutely clear that they wouldn't. That's why we've changed the strategic doctrine of strategic restraint. And now the Prime Minister, after the attacks in Pulwama,
and the Balakot airstrike.
Balakot airstrikes, and inside Pakistani territory, he said we will take the fight against terror to its point of inception. So this is a completely new ball game, and I think even when it comes to other foreign policy issues, I am told, and I have reasonably good evidence, that the Pakistanis have told the Chinese that they should lift the technical hold on Masood Azhar. Because they say that once they lift the technical hold on Masood Azhar, India should be made to de-escalate. Hey, wait a minute. We didn't escalate. It's Pakistan which escalated.
Right.
And we will give it back to them in a very calibrated measure. We didn't attack their civilian establishments. We didn't attack their military establishment. We went and hit a jihadi seminary. Yes. Because that jihadi seminary, Jaish claimed responsibility for the terror attack.
Yes.
And they went one step further, Gauri.
Yes.
They said they will carry out many more such attacks. So is this a better foreign policy, or is this the previous one, where because you're a nuclear weapon state, you said we will not take any action?
I give it to you that this government has busted the myth of Pakistan that, if you want to escalate, well, we're going to press the nuclear button. I give it to you there. But the flip-flop that a lot of people have been talking about is, first, when it was the swearing-in ceremony, that SAARC leaders, including Nawaz Sharif, was invited.
I know a little bit about that.
And then, of course, the flip-flop that happened,
No, there's only one. So flip-flop is equal flip, equal flop. No, I don't think it's like that. When the Prime Minister was being inaugurated, there was a discussion. I was involved on the periphery of that discussion. Okay. It is customary these days in many parts of the world when a head of state or government is when his inauguration or installation, swearing in is taking place, they will invite some leaders. So a discussion took place as to who are the leaders from which countries they should be invited. So a decision was taken that since the SAARC is a sub-regional grouping of which India is a member, all SAARC heads of state or government would be invited. Okay. This was before the government was even took oath of office.
Officially it was sworn in, yes.
So I think it was a fantastic gesture, and it provided the Pakistanis, it should have provided them with hope that you can do business with India.
Okay. Then, last question on foreign policy that I want to ask you, sir, is about China. Every time, even after Pulwama, when there was immense international support, we need an answer as far as the Chinese support to Pakistan. Is it going to be our economic might? Do you think there has to be greater effort to ensure that India uses and leverages the $67 billion and growing kind of trade that we have?
You want my personal answer? I can't speak on behalf of my friends. I have no intention to. My personal answer is you're going to see a sea change. Okay. The Chinese are having great difficulty in dealing with the Pakistanis. The Chinese need to pay a price, okay? Even the CPEC area, etc., there are attacks on Chinese establishments, all right? The Chinese at some stage will have to make a conscious decision between looking at an India which is growing at 7.5%, which will be a $10 trillion economy, the world's third largest economy by 2030, and dealing with a failed state called Pakistan, all right? You have to navigate it from where we are now to that position. Okay. And that navigation doesn't come by hurling invectives and abuse at people. Insofar as the technical hold placed by China on Masood Azhar is concerned, I think that problem will be resolved. I have no doubt. Okay. The Americans and the French have already said if they don't deliver there, they will take it to an open session of the Security Council, or the French are already proscribing Masood Azhar as an entity under European Union law. But I'm saying something completely different. At the core is not the listing. Right. Even if he gets listed, I mean, their other man, Hafiz Syed, is listed. Yes. But he's still roaming around. Yeah.
And they create other entities, they create other
I'm coming to that. The real issue is seeking behavioral change by the Pakistani. The real issue in India
has
is
Modi
not
government been able to ensure that?
No, Modi government is going to try. Modi government builds toilets. But people have to learn to use the toilets. That's the behavioral change. Modi government can go to all the countries in the world. We're getting support all over. But the Pakistanis, as long as they allow the jihadi seminaries to work, I am one of those who believes that the day of reckoning is coming pretty soon. If you grow vipers in your backyard, those vipers are going to
come back and bite you.
Come and bite you, and in parts of the anatomy where it's going to sting.
But then this should have been the policy from day one, because
why wasn't it the policy? Well, ask the Congress people. Why wasn't it? Because the Pakistanis made an assessment on the kind of Congress leaders we had. They said, "Ye baate banayenge," but at the end of the day, I think in Mr. Modi they dialed the wrong number. Okay. And you have a situation today where I think the Pakistanis are suing for de-escalation, but they want de-escalation with talks. I don't see Mr. Modi giving them that.
Final two questions, sir. Do you think that this Indo-Pak equation and Indo-Pak escalation and the relation as it stands right now should be part of election rhetoric, should be part of election narrative? Do you think it should find its way into speeches?
Hey, wait a minute, young lady. Who attacked us in Pulwama? It's the Pakistani security establishment which blessed a attack by a proscribed terrorist entity which is listed in the United Nations Security Council list. So they allowed it, okay? What was their calculation? I think the Pakistanis need a reality check. They probably thought that a terror attack would take place in Pulwama. Mr. Modi and the security establishment would, like Dr. Manmohan Singh, take it lying down, and that the internal equation will change, and their best friends in the Congress party would be laughing all the way back to the electoral victory.
So that's you still haven't answered my question. You still haven't answered my question.
They brought it about. The Pakistanis brought it about. But that's not as serious as what I'm going to tell you now. Who lumped it? The Congress party, by questioning the security forces, by asking for proof, they fell into the Pakistani trap. Okay. So now we have Congress Pakistani bhai, and they are going to pay the price in the election, where I didn't think, we didn't go seeking it. Okay. If we had gone seeking it, you can ask me the question whether it should be part of the
BJP lapped it up. BJP lapped it up is what we can say.
I'm sure the BJP, wait a minute, I don't know whether they lapped it up, but if I were an inner core advisor, I'm a member of the Council of Ministers, I'm a very proud Karyakarta, I would say, use this discussion till the last day of election.
All right, we wrap this up, sir. And this is the season of a lot of Rajya Sabha members also taking the electoral plunge. Do we see you also taking an electoral plunge?
It's entirely up to the party. Entirely up to the
Would
party.
you be open to Amritsar?
Well, look, if the party wants me to contest, whether it is from Amritsar or from any other place, I'm a disciplined Karyakarta. Yeah, I will take up the challenge. But the party must feel that it needs me. You understand? I'm sitting pretty as a Rajya Sabha member.
Right.
I've got another term of 2 years, and then when my term comes to an end, we will still have 325 out of 400 in the UP Assembly. So look, this is a decision which the party takes.
So party has to decide.
Party.
You're open to that challenge.
Yeah, I'm open to that.
All right, we leave it there, sir. Thanks much for speaking to us. Thanks much for watching this special show in conversation with Mr. Hardeep Puri. Thanks.